very much. Joining me now, one of the lawmakers at that House hearing today, Congressman Eric Swalwell. Congressman Swalwell, what do you make of Donald Trump Jr. citing attorney-client privilege of all things and refusing to describe the conversation he had with his father? I mean, can you do that with just because attorneys may be in the room?
Good evening, Anderson. This falls in line with others who have casually exerted privileges. Jeff Sessions cites a long-standing Department of Justice privilege, which is not found in the law, that he couldn't tell us what he says to Donald Trump. And Roger Stone cited a privilege on behalf of a journalist when we asked him who he was talking to at WikiLeaks. This is not a privilege in the law. If he's talking to his father and they're trying to get their story straight, that's not recognized as a privilege. And if it was, essentially every defendant in America could call into their attorney's office an alibi witness and talk to them directly to get their story straight, and a prosecutor would never be able to penetrate that. That's not how it works. And we hope that the Republicans will call him back under subpoena and actually compel him, which they have the power to do.
Well, so let me ask you about that. I mean, you talk about the Republicans calling him back. Obviously, they're in control of your committee. Is that what it takes? I mean, can they force him to answer the question?
Yeah. And that's what Ranking Member Schiff, asked for. Is we believe we're on solid legal standing here. That if he is there under subpoena, he would have to be he would be ordered to answer the question. Now, most witnesses come in voluntarily, and normally that works. But as we've seen, a number of them have refused to answer our questions, and they cite that they're there voluntarily, and we can't force them. And so, I believe the Republicans should, start putting these witnesses under subpoena, and then when they assert bogus privileges, compel them to testify, and I think we'll get to the truth.
I don't know if you can say, but did anybody challenge this idea when he invoked attorney-client privilege? I mean, did anybody say, like, wait a minute, this is ludicrous?
Oh, yes, it was challenged. It was pretty vigorously challenged, and they stuck to their position that they were not going to share any conversations that Donald Trump Jr. had with his father about the June 9th meeting.
Can you say how the Republicans on the committee reacted?
Well, they had the power to tell him that he'll have to come back under subpoena if he refuses to answer, and sometimes that will just put the witness in a position of not wanting to go through all that and just answering. But they didn't do that, and I hope that they recognize the seriousness of this, because this June 9th meeting is a cornerstone piece of our investigation, and what the president knew, what Donald Trump as a candidate knew at the time, is critically important for us.
Also, if you can say, just to be clear, do you believe conversations between Donald Trump Jr. and Hope Hicks were essentially conversations between Donald Trump Jr. and his father? Because, I mean, Hope Hicks is, his right-hand person.
Yeah, Anderson, so, I can't go into what was discussed other than this objection over the privilege, but, we do know she was the communications director, and if there were conversations between Hope Hicks and Donald Trump Jr., and she was a intermediary, that's not privileged either. So
okay.
I think the best thing to do is, take this investigation as serious as it should be, and bring these witnesses up subpoena, and we'll get the answers.
Congressman, stay with us. I want to bring in Michael Zeldin, also Gloria Borger. Michael, I mean, you hear the congressman. Do you believe there was any legal merit to Trump Jr.'s claim of attorney-client privilege?
None whatsoever. If there were any type of privilege between him and his lawyer as they spoke to one another, it would probably be waived because there were third parties present. So I don't think that there's a colorable claim of attorney-client privilege under the structure that we know the conversations took place in, which is Don Jr. and his lawyer talking through Hope Hicks to the president, and her serving as intermediary in those conversations. There's nothing that's attorney-client privilege protectable in that chain.
And Gloria, in terms of optics surrounding the investigation, how problematic is it for the president to have his son invoke what is, if you listen to Michael Zeldin, Jeff Toobin, others, pretty bogus legal reasoning and refuse to answer?
Well, it's not great. I mean, because you have to ask the question, why is he refusing to answer the question about what he said to his father? I noticed that the congressman was talking about getting your story straight, I think, as he put it. Well, if that was the case, I think either the special counsel or the congressional committees are going to want to know what story. What were you discussing here? And I think by not answering the question, you only raise more questions.
Congress, yeah.
I wanted to just add one thing. Remember, when this whole thing broke, the attorney for the president, Jay Sekulow, went on Meet the Press, and he said categorically the president had nothing to do with the drafting of this statement.
Right. He said it was Donald Trump Jr.'s lawyers.
Right. That was untruthful. And so maybe the assertion of attorney-client privileges here is buy time so they can get their story straight, which is in and of itself very problematic, and I don't think Mueller will find that at all availing.
Congressman, if there was nothing inappropriate about the discussions regarding the 2016 Trump Tower meeting, wouldn't it behoove the president and his son to just get it all out there? I mean, the president is the one who says this whole thing is a hoax.
That's right. And actually, Donald Trump Jr. can actually just waive the privilege if he was forthcoming and wanted to clear the air. But, Anderson, just to put this in perspective, June 3rd, the meeting is set up. That's when they're offered dirt on Hillary Clinton. June 7th, Donald Trump, the candidate, cryptically says that he's going to reveal new information about Hillary Clinton. June 9th is when the meeting occurs, and then June 12th is when WikiLeaks first announces that they have dirt and emails on Hillary Clinton. So this is a pivotal point in our investigation, and to hide behind a made-up privilege sets us back in what we need to tell the American people.
Michael, and may I add one thing to that timeline of Congressman Swalwell's, which I agree with, which is when the president said on June the 9th that there would be something forthcoming. Then the meeting occurs on the 9th. When the meeting's sort of a bust, if you will, from the dirt on Hillary stuff, nothing ever is forthcoming. So when you have a timeline like that, where June 3 is the initial email, the president says a dirt is coming, the meeting's a bust, and then nothing is forthcoming, it just implies that they're talking to one another during that whole chain of events. It's not plausible otherwise.
Michael, do you believe Robert Mueller would permit Trump Jr. to claim attorney-client privilege about conversations with his father? And if not, what mechanism could Mueller use to force Trump Jr. to answer?
Well, Mueller has the authority to seek contempt hearing before a judge as well for a failure to answer. I don't believe that Mueller will find that assertion of attorney-client privilege to be availing. And I think that if he continues to refuse it this way, it's going to be tantamount to a disaster for Clinton and his team, because it'll be viewed as obstruction by Mueller and be added to this obstruction of justice mosaic that they're both building for another.
Gloria, I know you've got a question for the congressman.
Congressman, I just want to know what you think about bringing in Hope Hicks now before your committee. I mean, doesn't she become more of a central figure because she was the conduit between Donald Trump Jr. and his father, particularly on Air Force One?
Certainly relevant because of prior reports as well, with her role in the firing of James Comey. But we want to interview anyone who was involved in the June 9th meeting or who was involved in the statement about the June 9th meeting. And so, I'll leave it to our ranking member and chairman to hopefully sort that out. But I don't see how an investigation would be complete without her.
And can I just ask one more thing? Why do you think Don Jr. was reluctant today? You were sitting in that room. Why do you think he didn't want to answer that question about his conversation with his father?
I can't speak to his motives. I can just tell you as a former prosecutor, it's usually when you're seeking to protect somebody. That's when you don't answer a direct question, when you demonstrate that you have information on it.
Yeah. Congressman Swalwell, Gloria Borger, Michael Zeldin, appreciate it. Thanks very much. Coming up, the president, the RNC, Steve Bannon, all in Roy Moore's corner now in the upcoming election for a U.S. Senate seat, despite the multiple accusations against Moore. I'll speak with Moore's campaign spokeswoman next. Also ahead, the latest on raging wildfires in Southern California. The image is unbelievable. Evacuations, a freeway shut down at one point. We'll have the latest.